This is what'll happen if Elon Musk's Neuralink becomes a reality. Teens controlling prisoners to play real-life Call of Duty. So this movie is set in the future, but then it was released over a decade ago, so technically, it's set in the present. Anyway, we see this guy Cable with his revolver in a war zone. He's just clapping guys left and right as easily as I do on Call of Duty. What can I say? My mouse has RGB lights. While Cable is still in the building, a grenade is thrown in his direction. He manages to jump out the window in time and struggles to walk away to the safe point. Now we see Cable and a bunch of other guys in a vehicle talking about making it out of here alive. One guy says nobody's making it out of here. Another says he will. We'll see. Next we see this man, Bob, being chased down by two people who look like they work for him. The lady, Gina, tells him they need a meaty appearance, but Bob is just an asshole. We cut to this guy, Ken Castle, who's the creator of games called Society and Slayers. In Society, players control actual human beings as opposed to animated characters. Wonder how that's possible? Well, people get paid to be controlled and people pay to control. Looking at my bank account, I know what side of the divide I would have been in Society. But then, when you thought Society was bad enough, the Ken Castle guy decided to bring something worse, Slayers. As the narrator says, Society lets you live through others while Slayers lets you die through others. Slayers is the game Cable is in. His controller is a boy named Simon Silverton. Anyway, Ken Castle is now on a show with Gina. Ken explains that Slayers are death row inmates who were offered to be in this game as an alternative to their sentences. Cruel and unusual punishment, anyone? They stay alive for 30 sessions. If they stay alive for 30 sessions, they get set free. Actually, that's not a bad deal. Of course, Ken needed the full approval of the federal government to run this game, and he got it. The feds, right? Gina's really drilling him, saying that the chances of survival for the Slayers are next to zero, and Ken responds by continuing to be a jerk. He's handling this really well. He goes on to explain how it works. A single nanocell is planted in the brain of the Slayer, and it goes on to replicate. Any human being who has this cell implanted gets a unique IP address like a mobile device. Ken goes on to suggest that some people enjoy being controlled, having all their choices made for them and all that stuff. Wait a second, that's just reality. Well, the interview is now over, and Gina talks about Cable doing so well in Slayers, and while they're talking, there's some sort of technical breach, and this brother from an organization called Humans is sending a message to Ken. We now go into the game. The Slayers are just doing their thing, fighting, playing basketball, you know, just like prisoners. But Cable is just on his own looking around and observing. He sees a man using crutches, and it takes him back to when he was with his wife and daughter. Oh, by the way, Cable is just his game name, and he hates being called that. He always insists that his name is Tillman. He's back to the present now, and he's talking with this crazy looking guy. It's more like the guy's talking to him, because Cable is not even saying anything back. While the guy's talking, Cable's mind quickly drifts off to a guy sitting in a chair in an investigation room with blood dripping from his head. Then suddenly, he just sits back up and Cable comes back to the present. Don't worry, you'll understand this better later. But now we're briefly shown how badly Cable's wife is taking this. I feel bad for her, for real. Then next thing, someone drops off a photo of his wife and daughter for Cable, and it takes him to another memory with his wife. Notice the tattoo on his hand which says, "I'm right here with you," but he's quickly jerked back to reality by a voice from outside. The lady who just brought him the photo is telling him to sign a paper if he wants to get back to his wife and kid. Of course, he signs it without hesitation, and the woman gives him a little prick on his hand and she leaves without revealing herself. Let's now take a trip to Society. It's just one big over-colorful high school party. Cable's wife, Nika, is an avatar here who's being controlled by this super fat dude. Thick. She walks over to this guy with the pig's nose on and flirts with him. As the conversation progresses, things get a little sussy. She looks up and sees her husband's face on this huge Slayer poster, and her mood immediately changes. While that is happening, those guys from Humans hack into this fat dude's game, and it crashes. He's obviously pissed. Something was about to happen. And this crash didn't happen to just him. It happened to an estimated 750,000 players, as it's being reported by these weird-looking newscasters who are smoking on live TV. Ken is watching the news as they say the hacking might cost him billions. He doesn't seem so bothered though. Let's now go back into the game. The Slayers are on a mission and most of them are just being clapped recklessly. But Cable is still holding his own down though. He sees a woman just walking blindly and he runs to save her from a moving car. But she just stands up and walks straight back and gets hit by another truck. Alrighty then. Cable just keeps going. He sees dudes being fried. Sees this lady getting her mind blown. Literally. He sees Slayers dropping like flies everywhere but he just keeps going. What can he do anyway? He keeps going until he wins. Millions of people are watching him all over the world by the way. In London, Los Angeles, Baghdad, Barcelona, Beijing, everywhere. After the game, he and the others who survived head back to where they're being kept. In the truck, this guy starts going crazy saying they're all going to die. I really don't doubt it. We now see Simon, Cable's controller, walk into his crazy room with some crazy technology. He's only a teenager, but he's getting disturbed by a bunch of ladies. Can't relate. Some hate him, some love him, and some just want to buy control of Cable from him. But Simon says Cable is not for sale. Simon now sees a video of Cable clapping a guy in an investigation room, and a voice starts echoing. If you want to talk to Cable, we can show you how. We meet immediately cut to Ken talking with a couple guys about Cable. For some reason, he wants to kill Cable and he's preparing this guy, Hackman, to go in and take Cable out. Not to a fancy restaurant or anything, to the afterlife. Ken says the advantage Hackman has over Cable is that, while Cable has the nano cell and is being controlled by Simon, nobody controls Hackman. Cable might have a little delay between when Simon sends the commands and when he begins to operate, but Hackman has none of that. And Hackman is integrated into Slayers pretty quickly. We see him bench pressing in the room with the rest of the inmates, and just moments later, a guard comes to take Cable away for upgrades. We now see Cable firing bullets at some moving avatars. While that is happening, he has a little heart-to-heart with the guard about how frustrating the delay is. He says that slice of a second out there is the difference between living and dying. I know that feel. All gamers hate lag. And we quickly see the difference. Hackman decides to show off by shooting his gun super fast. Cable is now in the bathroom cleaning himself up when Hackman comes to him and tells him he just killed someone and he will clap him too on Sunday. Okay, first of all, where are your clothes? Also, why did you just break into song? This guy is too funny, man. Cable is not moved by any of that though. But when Hackman refers to his wife and daughter as, dancers, he loses it and chases after him, but he disappears. Fast forward to game day and Simon is speaking to Cable, which is weird because gamers normally can't talk to the avatars. The interaction between Simon and Cable is on another level now. Simon is more involved, but Cable is still doing his thing, just clapping everyone everywhere. Actually, he's clapping everyone because Simon is a badass gamer like me. Anyway, remember that crazy looking guy who's always talking with Cable? He's just there in the middle of the war zone sweeping, and before we know it, he gets shot. And you can see how emotional that gets Cable. He's not a machine after all. He's human. But it's quickly back to the grind. Cable is now moving forward. He heads towards some place, but it's a restricted area in the game. Then boom, out of nowhere, we see Hackman. He gives Cable a good beatdown for a few seconds, puts him on the floor, and brings out his pistol to clap him. But the gun doesn't really shoot. The bullet just pops out. Then Cable kicks him in his happy fun place before some men come and take Hackman away. Cable is now telling Simon that he doesn't know who's behind it, but he knows he was supposed to die tonight. He says he can beat them, but not with Simon controlling him. He tells Simon to cut him loose if he wants to win. Now we see Nika get into this office. She's fighting for custody of her daughter who has been placed in the care of some wealthy foster parents. But because of Cable's situation, coupled with her being an actor in society, the chances of her getting her daughter back are super low. But as usual, the man she's talking to says they'll give her an application consideration. We've all heard that line before, haven't we? I'll get back to you. Sure you will. Anyway, we now see Simon playing a game in his room when this brother from the humans pops up on his screen and starts having a conversation with him. I know I keep saying this brother, but his name is actually Brother. I mean, I don't believe his parents gave birth to a child and named him Brother, but that's just what he goes by. Anyway, Brother's telling Simon to give Cable the freedom he asked for. He goes on saying that Cable knows things that Ken doesn't want to get out, and that's why he's trying to clap him. But Simon is a stubborn little boy, and that's not even surprising at all. Think of any gamer you know in his teens. He's really stubborn, isn't he? Simon says there's one battle left and he can handle his own business. He thinks this is a game. Brother tells him it's bigger than him. It's not something he can control. If he insists on going on by himself, Cable will only get clapped in front of the whole world. Simon now says all this is too heavy for him. He says he's just a gamer, nothing more. And Brother tells him if he wants to win the game, he just has to cut Cable loose. Simon says it would be cheating, but Brother tells him it won't. Simon seems to finally agree. Then we see that lady from last time come to Cable's cell. She calls him Tillman, so she's probably a friend. She tells him Simon will give him what he was asking for, but with or without Simon, he won't ever reach the safe point. Ken won't allow it. She tells him he has to escape because his wife and daughter need him. That convinces him, and Cable tells her to get him something. Drunk. Then we quickly cut to Cable strapping up for another round of battles, and he quickly downs a bottle of vodka. A voice from above tells him to put it down, but he doesn't. He finishes the bottle and heads out with the rest of the guys. He makes sure to throw the bottle at the camera before he gets outside, but when he gets outside, it's not looking pretty. He's looking really disoriented. Stay away from alcohol, kids. Or as I like to call it, Dad's angry juice. He's now asking Simon what happened. Boy, you just finished a whole bottle of vodka in one gulp. That's what happened. He can't even get his bearings straight. Simon, who no longer has control, is now pacing around and trying to motivate Cable to pull himself together. Cable gets to some parking lot and heads straight to the fuel tank of a car. He pukes in it, urinates in it, then he smashes the glass and enters the driver's seat. I don't think this is how cars work, but whatever. As he's driving off, Hackman and a few other guys show up and start shooting at him. Hackman runs to the car and hangs by the door, but Cable manages to get him off and drive out. It looks like he wants to escape. Simon is begging him to get back in the game, but he doesn't really seem to be interested in playing Simon Says. No pun intended. As he's driving, Cable shoots at something, and it seems that Simon's camera because his screen goes completely blank. Simon says, I'm dead. Cable, by the way, is just going rogue with his driving, hitting and shooting any and everything that tries to get in his way. He finally smashes his car into a blockade and the car topples over. He quickly gets out of it and starts running, but then some sort of missile thing from the sky flies towards his direction and blows up on the ground. Immediately as that happens, the screens all over the world where Cable is being watched go blank. Then a newscaster says Cable has been officially listed as flagged, just one session away from being the first Slayer to win a full pardon and released. They say he has been removed from all the rosters and listings of Slayers. Then we see Gina telling her colleague to find Cable's wife ASAP. Well, she's in the game of society being used by this disgusting dude. Anyway, now we see this lady, Tracy, a member of the humans, approach Cable and tell him to come with her. She's the lady who has been coming to to him in his cell. He recognizes her voice and immediately goes with her on her bike. I mean, what other choice does he have? They ride straight into a building, which I believe is the humans' headquarters. Yes, it is. See, brother's right there. They tell him why they broke him out and why they need him. They tell him all about the monster that Ken Castle is, and how he's destroying the prison system and even the healthcare system with his plan to enslave the entire population. Could that be Elon Musk's true plan? Too? But Cable is not really interested in playing savior. He starts walking out, but when they tell him they know where his wife is, you already know he had to stop and turn back. We now see Nika in society. Gina is also there and has sighted her. Nika walks into a disgusting bar with so much debauchery going on. This disgusting guy, Rick, approaches her and they head off to an elevator to do whatever this is. Then they head into a room. Before anything can happen, her husband shows up and pretty much breaks Rick's back. He's trying to talk to his wife now, but this disgusting dude just keeps getting in the way of their conversation. Cable screams at him and tells him if he says anything else, he'll find him and rip him to pieces. He then takes Nika out and walks out. They're heading straight for the humans' headquarters, but not so fast. They get to the elevator and the first thing they see is Hackman. He shoots Cable and he literally just flies away. Then he takes Nika with him in the elevator. A couple join them in the elevator and Hackman claps them both. Somehow, the disgusting guy likes that. But as the elevator door opens, Cable appears and drags Hackman out. Did you think he was just going to let you take his wife like that? No chance. He starts beating the shit out of Hackman, shoots him in the leg, and shoots at some other men that show up trying to clap him. He takes Nika and leaves, and the guy controlling her directs them to go to a rave. But even here, there are people trying to clap Cable. They're shooting carelessly and killing random people at the party. Meanwhile, Cable and Nika manage to get outside, where they're greeted by a boss. It's Gina. She says she can get them out of here. She tells Cable he can trust her, but he doesn't look like he's ready to trust anyone right now. We now cut to Simon being interrogated by a CIA agent, Agent Keith. Of course, it's about Cable. The agent tells him he's being held on suspicion of aiding the escape of a convicted murderer. They've confiscated his hard drives and are currently combing through his internet activity over the last 10 years. This guy's a gamer and a teenager. What do you think they'll find on his internet history? Probably My Little Pony. Have you ever heard of clapping? Well, they've also frozen his father's accounts. The little boy's obviously scared, but he manages to negotiate. He tells him he wants a sandwich if he's going to talk, and they have to cut off the crust. Anyway, let's head back to Cable and the gang. They're now with the humans. They take some of Nika's blood and are about to go do some sciencey stuff on it. Basically, they're trying to kill the nanocells or something like that. If not, she'll be broadcasting everything she sees and hears. About that time, Brother calls Cable aside. There's something Cable knows about Ken Castle's project that he really needs. Cable says he doesn't know what to tell him, so Brother just tells him to show him instead. Back to Nika, and the humans have now broken the link. Now we see the fat guy wake up to see a bunch of guys in his room. They say they're tech support. The humans now have Cable strapped to a chair with some stuff connected to his head. They're transmitting his memories to raw audio-visual data, so they basically enter his brain, and they can see what happened. Now here's what happened. Cable walks into an investigation room and sits across from his friend, Scotch. Scotch is telling him that some guy, Ken's guys I believe, have been giving him injections, taking and giving him blood, feeding him pills, and hooking him up to computers for days. He also says he has been having blackouts, but Cable doesn't look so good and Scotch points that out. Cable just says I'm sorry, and brings out a revolver. Then boom, he claps his own friend. Now that's the image you saw the other time. That's too much for Cable, so he unstraps himself and goes out to sit alone in the hallway. Nika's awake by now and she goes to him and they just kiss and embrace each other. Cable immediately asks for his daughter and Nika just tells him she couldn't stop them. Tracy then comes and says that the foster parents paid a truckload of money to remain anonymous, but there's always a data trail if you know where to look. Long story short, their daughter is with Ken Castle. Imagine that. Cable immediately leaves. Gina chases after him but she can't stop him, but she sees some men arrive in a black SUV. Simon, by the way, is released. Ken is at his house looking at a screen which says rest in peace to Cable, and he tells his partner that Cable will come to him. And well, he's not wrong at all, because that's Cable right there entering Castle's castle. Inside the mansion, Cable sees his daughter playing with a doll, and he immediately runs to her, but he's stopped by some sort of screen. Apparently, she's not really there. It's only a super clear video. Cable goes downstairs, and Ken and a bunch of guys are doing a little performance. I won't lie, it's enjoyable, but I'm really forcing myself not to enjoy it since they're the bad guys. They even show Cable a video of the humans being clapped by their man, while still doing his performance. Ken gives a cue to his men and they rush Cable, who takes them out one by one. He finishes with them, and then turns to face Ken, who just tells him he's awesome. Thanks, I guess. He grabs Ken by the collar, but Ken seems really confident that he won't hurt him. He tells Cable that he knows he just wants his daughter, and that's true. Ken warns him not to do anything stupid if he wants to see her, so Cable leaves him. Ken now takes him to a basketball court. On his way, he's telling Cable that he also has a nanocell in his own head. Basically, he has an army of psychotics under his control. He thinks something, they do it. Elon Musk moment. By the way, Hackman is on the basketball court, dancing and seemingly waiting for Cable. With these nanocells, Ken says he could have 100 million people under his control in just 6 months, all of them doing his bidding, including voting how he wants them to vote. A corrupt democracy? How unrealistic. As Ken is talking, Hackman comes to attack Cable and Cable is giving him a beating of a lifetime. Is that all you've got, tough guy? This is probably the easiest killing Cable will ever make. He now picks up Hackman's knife and goes to hack down Ken, but there's some type of force field around Castle that stops Cable from slashing his neck, like Black Friday prices. Everything around here is operating just exactly how Ken wants it, but then Gina is there to save the day. She hit the the upload button on this tab in some room, and the live footage of Cable and Ken is now being broadcast all over the world. Like literally the entire world can see this fight happening between Cable and Ken right now. But of course, the men don't know. The only people they know for sure are watching are those men sitting in the audience. It's a pretty unfair match, but Cable is still holding his own. He manages to give Ken some marks on his body, but Ken decides to make the match even more unfair by bringing Cable's wife and daughter in. He's trying to use the powers he has over Cable to get him to clap his own daughter, but Cable fights it. He puts the knife down. Ken is shocked. Cable stands up, grabs Ken by the neck, and points the knife to his torso. Apparently, it's not just Cable's willpower doing this. It's Simon. He really is a badass gamer. It's just now that Ken's technical team finds out that they're being broadcast live, and someone is interfering from outside. Ken tells them to jam the signal, but it's too late. He takes matters into his own hands and starts fighting, but Cable quickly uses his power against him. He tells Ken Castle to look at the knife and imagine him sticking the knife in him and make it real. And that's exactly what happens. He pretty much claps himself with his own mind. Everybody watching from all around the world starts cheering for Cable. Cable kisses his daughter and then tells the support crew to turn off Nanix, since Ken is now dead. They agree and do it right there. They're free now, so I guess we can go back to calling him Tillman now. So last thing we see is Tillman driving off with his wife and daughter. Game over. Moral of the story? Elon Musk.